So there's a family near Ponoka, and the father ran a grain operation for about 41 years. His son had stayed, and he started working the land at 19 years old. And by the time his father died, he had been there for 32 years farming this property. He seeded every spring, he did the combining every fall, and he fixed what broke in between with the help of his father on the land. His daughter left at 23. She's in North Vancouver now, she does well for herself. She comes back to the farm maybe once a year. Obviously, she came back for the funeral. The will that the father had put in place before he passed said equal for the kids, 50-50, 50 for the son who worked there, 50 for the daughter. The farm was worth about 2.2 million. The son's offer to buy her out was 680,000. Now, her Vancouver real estate lawyer told her that the land was worth far more than that. That was 3 years ago.
And to this day, they don't speak.
Now, before we go any further, nothing in this series is legal, tax, or financial advice. We are real estate operators in the Calgary market. Our job is to give you the vocabulary and the context. Ultimately, the decisions are yours. Now, there's a number that gets cited a lot in this space. Somewhere between 70 and 90% of family wealth is gone by the third generation.
When most people hear that, they assume it's investments, bad decisions, market timing, or someone who blew through the entire inheritance.
And that's almost never what actually happens.
The research is pretty consistent on this. Around 60% of the time, family wealth disappears because of a breakdown in communication. Not a market crash, not a bad investment, a conversation that was never had.
The other 40% is the heirs who are never financially prepared and they had no governance structure. Nobody ever said, here's how we make decisions when things get complicated.
Which means if you add it up, the actual investment returns are almost a footnote. The wealth doesn't disappear because of the market, it disappears because of the family.
Now, I want to take us back to that farm for a second because the legal dispute, the 3 years of silence with the brother and sister, it didn't just start when the father passed away.
When did it start?
So it started 30 years earlier when the son took over the equipment payments on the farm after a bad harvest. His father never acknowledged it formally. When the daughter moved away and the dad kept saying, hey, we'll figure it out when the time comes. Nobody ever actually sat down and said, here's what this land means. Here's what I want to happen to it. Here's who I want to take over. And here's what I think is fair.
The will was the last document. It wasn't the only conversation that needed to happen, however.
Right. And the will said equal, which the father probably thought was fair. But by the time he signed it, there was 30 years of unspoken assumption that had already been building up from the son and from the daughter.
So the son here assumed that he'd earn more. The daughter assumed equal meant equal, and neither one of them was wrong based on the information that they had.
And they just had completely different information and context because nobody had ever put it on the table, sat them down as a family, and talked about what happens. And we see a version of this in rental portfolios too. There's a couple in Calgary who built 4 rental properties over 20 years. They had 2 duplexes in Forest Lawn, a house in Hillhurst, and a condo in the Beltline. And the middle son managed them for years. He collected rents, he did the repairs himself. He was the one who got called when the furnaces need to get replaced. The dad put him on the title of the property as a thank you, just the one property, and he never updated anything else. He also never wrote down why.
And how did that one resolve itself?
So that was 2 years of legal unwinding. That one undocumented gesture, which came from a good place, created a whole mess that cost the family more professional and legal fees than the property was even worth.
The law here doesn't care about your intentions, it cares about the documents. There's something specific about real estate that makes this harder than almost any other asset class.
You can split a portfolio, you can liquidate an RSP, it's easy to divide cash.
You can't split a farm. You can't divide a cottage. A lake property in half is 2 properties with shared access and a legal dispute waiting to happen.
And it's not just the math, it's what the assets represent to these families. I've sat across from a woman in her late 60s. Her husband had just passed, and she said, I know we should probably sell the acreage, but he planted every tree on the property himself, every single one, and I can't sign the listing agreement. I don't want to sell.
That's not irrational, that's just human.
It's completely human, but her kids have 3 different opinions about what to do with it, and none of them had ever talked to each other about it or to mom before that moment.
The cottage or the cabin is the one that comes up the most. Families who've had the lake property for 20, 30 years, the grandkids grew up there, the original dock is there, and when the parents die, there's suddenly a $900,000 asset that has to be accounted for in the estate.
One kid wants to keep it, one needs the cash, one lives in Toronto and hasn't been there in 6 years, and there's no written intention from the people who built it and what they actually wanted when they pass.
So the courts have to make a decision, or the family makes it under pressure. Either way, nobody wins in these cases.
Now, the families who break this pattern, and they exist, they're not wealthier, they don't have smarter lawyers, and they're not doing anything exotic. They're just doing something most families never do. So we want to show you guys a pattern because once you see it, it's everywhere.
So, generation one are the builders. They went through something hard, a drought, a recession, starting from nothing, immigrating with less than that. They have a physical, visceral relationship with what they built, and they know what it cost them. Now, generation two, they watched it being built. They carry some of the story, maybe not all of it, but some, and they usually hold on to what was inherited. Sometimes they grow it, but the emotional weight is already lighter in this generation. They received it and they didn't really bleed for it. Generation three, they were born into it. They've never seen what wasn't there. The sacrifice, the early mornings, the years when there was nothing. That's all well before them. They have no frame for it and nobody gave them one. And I want to be clear about something here because the instinct is to blame this third generation, call them ungrateful, say they didn't appreciate what they got.
And that's not what this is.
You cannot steward something you were never brought into. The third generation didn't fail. They were handed something with no map, no context, no instruction, and then expected to protect it. It's not really failure. It's an impossible position they were put in to begin with.
This space right here, the wealth crossed, the story did not.
The families who hold wealth across generations, and we've been in rooms with a lot of them, they share one thing. It's not a particular investment strategy. It's not a specific legal structure either.
It's actually something very simple. They talk about it.
Intentionally, not at Christmas dinner when someone's had a glass of wine and the topic comes up, a real conversation, sometimes a formal family meeting where the next generation is brought into the reality of what exists, what it costs, and how decisions are supposed to get made.
And they document the why, not just the what. A will tells you what someone owned and who gets it. A letter of wishes tells you why. Why the farm goes to the son who stayed and worked the land for 30 years. Why the cottage has certain conditions attached. Why one child received more during the parent's lifetime, and the estate is structured to account for these things.
That document isn't legally binding, but it changes everything about how the family receives what they inherit. Because it's not just the assets here, it's the explanation. It's a conversation the parent was never quite able to have in person.
And they make the distinction between fair and equal. Those are not the same thing.
Equal is a number, fair is a conversation. And the families who confuse the two, who think equal automatically means fair, are the ones who usually end up in a courtroom.
So let's go back to the Ponoka farm for a second. Equal was 50-50, but was it fair? The son gave 32 years of his life to that land. The daughter received a childhood and an education funded in part by that farm's income and then decided to build her own life elsewhere. Neither of those things makes her less entitled to what her father left, but they make the conversation necessary. They also make it so that the will alone is not enough.
The will is not a conversation, and it's never a substitute for the conversation.
The thing that stays with us about the farm family and about a lot of families we've been through this with is that nobody was trying to hurt anyone. The father worked his whole life to give something to his kids. That was the whole point. He just never found the right time to talk about it. Or it felt like the kind of conversation you have when things start winding down, and things never quite started winding down until they did.
That's the version that plays out most often. It's not greed, it's not dysfunction, just time passing and the assumption that there's more of it coming.
The third generation curse isn't a curse, it's a pattern. And the pattern isn't about investing badly, it's about a conversation that kept getting postponed until it was too late to have it done correctly.
So the families who break this pattern, they're not exceptional. They just started the conversation earlier than they thought they needed to.
And most families think they have time. They usually have less than they think. Now, the fact that you just spend time thinking about this, it genuinely puts you ahead of most people.
Most families never have this conversation at all. We've just given you some tools to get that started.
If you want to take this further, we're always up for a conversation. The link to connect with us is down in the video description below. And stay tuned for episode 4. This is how the families who actually crack this use real estate to build wealth that survives them long after they die. And it's the one that we've been building toward.
Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of these episodes and more. This is an 8-part series, and it will help you and your family.
We'll see you there on episode 4.